In a moment of historic reckoning, King Charles has quietly announced his desire to divorce Camilla, a move that no one anticipated but everyone sensed was building. According to sources, the choice was made in response to embarrassing disclosures of Camilla's covert conversations, including attempts to alter Diana's legacy. A sitting king is getting ready to break the closest personal ties to the throne for the first time in contemporary royal history, which might permanently alter the monarchy's destiny. The bombshell royal. A closed-door emergency meeting was held at Clarence's house at precisely 9:15 a.m. 2 senior courtiers, the king's private secretary, and his closest legal advisors were in attendance. The terrible comments were spoken by King Charles III, who was clearly shocked. "I want to get away from Queen Camilla." His hands shook, his voice cracked, and he gripped a folder labeled "Confidential Domestic Actions," according to witnesses. It was said that the room went quiet. A reigning king had uttered the word divorce for the first time in contemporary royal history. Only a few people had been told in advance. Among them were the Lord Chamberlain, Princess Anne, and Prince William. Although no formal announcement was made to the public, the palace was immediately rocked. According to one advisor, Charles said, "This has become untenable. The trust is broken." Legal paperwork was already in preliminary stages. The finality of his tone left no room for reconsideration. Queen Camilla was not present at the meeting and reportedly had not been informed. The catalyst, as shared in whispers across royal corridors, was an intelligence report delivered 8 days earlier. Compiled by internal palace investigators, it allegedly detailed unauthorized activities linked to Camilla's communications and media involvement. Though not treasonous, the dossier was enough to compromise the monarch's authority and embarrass the entire firm. It wasn't just indiscretion, one insider revealed. It was manipulation cloaked in strategy. Charles had long tolerated criticism, but betrayal from within was a line too far. This marks the first royal divorce of a sitting sovereign in over 400 years, shaking the very foundations of Britain's constitutional monarchy. While the royal family has weathered scandals before, Edward VII's abdication in 1936 and Charles and Diana's split in 1996. This crisis comes at a time when the crown is already under intense public scrutiny. For Charles, this moment is not just personal. It is historic. And in that council chamber, history changed again. But every royal fracture has a trigger. And this one was not just emotional. It was tactical. What Charles discovered in Camilla's private dealings wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was a calculated move that pushed the crown into war with itself. The betrayal that broke the crown. Palisades stumbled upon the first signs during routine vetting of press requests. A series of 2 detailed inquiries from a known royal biographer raised alarms. After discreet digging, royal security discovered that Camilla had been in direct communication with the author, who was allegedly working on a new biography that sought to reframe the royal narrative. Early drafts reportedly included altered portrayals of Princess Diana, Prince William, and Princess Catherine, portraying Camilla as a misunderstood, modernizing force. But the story didn't end there. Investigators also found logs of 3 private meetings between Camilla and a high-profile foreign media executive. These meetings, undocumented in official royal schedules, occurred over a 6-week span at an undisclosed Mayfair property. Sources claimed the subject was legacy management, specifically shaping global public opinion ahead of Charles's eventual abdication, or passing. The thought of Camilla independently maneuvering her post-royal image shocked Charles, who saw it as a breach of both protocol and personal loyalty. The contents of the biographer's notes, passed anonymously to Charles through a palace contact, were said to be devastating. One excerpt allegedly suggested Diana weaponized sympathy, while another questioned Kate's capacity for enduring royal duty. Charles, upon reading these passages, reportedly turned pale and said, "This is poison, and it has my name on it." The realization that his own wife might be complicit in such rewriting of family history was too much to bear. He summoned Camilla that same evening. When confronted, Camilla reportedly offered no outright denial. She dismissed the concerns as exaggerations and misunderstandings, saying the author was free to interpret events as they saw fit. But her tone was cool, unrepentant. Charles, standing before a fireplace in St. James's, said quietly, "You knew what you were doing." She left the room without another word. For the king, it was confirmation. The betrayal had not only occurred, it had been planned, and it had shattered the fragile unity he spent decades building. What followed was not public spectacle, but private unraveling. For the second time in his life, Charles was facing the collapse of a marriage under the scrutiny of the crown. But this time, there were no cameras, just heartbreak, rage, and silence. Charles's heartbreak and rage. Insiders close to the king say he has entered a period of deep emotional withdrawal. Since announcing his intent to separate, Charles has cancelled 4 private engagements, declined invitations from Parliament, and postponed the annual Highgrove Summit scheduled for early October. One source described him as more broken than after Diana's death. At 74 years old, Charles had hoped for peace in his final chapter. Instead, he is left reeling, betrayed from within the very sanctuary he once guarded. "He gave her the crown," said one longtime aide. "She gave him betrayal." Charles reportedly repeated that phrase 3 times during a walk through the gardens of Windsor. His voice, his eyes red. Physicians have since been asked to monitor his blood pressure and stress levels, especially in light of prior concerns regarding his cardiovascular health, last publicly noted in February 2023. The monarchy can withstand scandal. But a monarch's health, that is another matter. The weight of public image has also fallen heavy. Charles is said to feel humiliated, particularly as headlines begin to surface about Camilla's alleged schemes. Aides have begun shielding him from tabloids and social media mentions, though one article in the Mirror reportedly reduced him to tears. The palace has initiated emotional support measures, quietly arranging sessions with his longtime spiritual advisor from Canterbury. One staffer said, "This is not a king with power right now. This is a man who is grieving. Yet even in grief, there is anger." In one private moment overheard by staff, Charles reportedly said, "She stole the future I spent 30 years defending." It was a reference to the years he spent slowly rehabilitating Camilla's image, braving public outrage, and redefining royal norms to make space for her. And now that investment has turned into a cautionary tale. The crown is not just wounded. It's bleeding from the inside, and the king stands in the center, cloaked in silence and fury. But while Charles withdrew in sorrow, Camilla began fighting for her version of Thestery. Alone, cut off, and branded a traitor, she now faced her own unraveling. And inside her shrinking circle, panic turned to collapse. Camilla's camp scrambles. By the next morning, Camilla's household was in chaos. 2 of her senior aides, Charlotte Trigg and Martin Ellis, resigned within 24 hours, both citing ethical concerns in internal HR memos. Her once loyal staff, now fragmented, faced restricted access to the palace's secure systems. All of Camilla's devices linked to the Royal Communications Office were remotely disabled by 10:30 a.m. Her orders were signed by King Charles himself. "The Queen is being treated like a security threat," one staffer whispered. In public, Camilla attempted to be calm through her personal spokesperson. She claimed the meetings with the biographer and media executive were entirely routine and framed the situation as a gross misinterpretation fueled by internal politics. But her tone was defensive. Behind closed doors, palace insiders reported her pacing for hours inside Mill House, the private Wiltshire estate she had retreated to late the night before. The property, once her sanctuary, is now under 24-hour security surveillance authorized by Charles. Camilla is said to feel abandoned, scapegoated, and misunderstood. According to One Eyed, she made several calls to Clarence House, all of which were declined or rerouted to voicemail. A final attempt to reach Charles directly was intercepted by his private secretary, who reportedly told her, "His Majesty has nothing further to say." Without official duties, without access, and without defenders, Camilla's position as queen consort has functionally collapsed. Her last appearance at a charity dinner on September 4th may be her final one in a public royal capacity. What stings most, insiders say, is the complete lack of support from senior royals. Not a single public or private defense has been mounted on her behalf. Not by Princess Anne, not by Prince Edward, and most damningly, not by Prince William. Her role, once fiercely protected by Charles, has been silently erased from internal communications. Camilla is no longer at the center of royal planning. She's on the edge of it looking in, and the silence is louder than condemnation. But as Camilla unraveled in isolation, William stood firm, watching, waiting, and withholding. His silence wasn't weakness. It was calculated, and for those inside the palace, it said more than any public rebuke ever could. William's silent approval. Prince William was one of the first briefed on Charles's decision to separate from Camilla, receiving the message via secure channel at 8:12 a.m. from the Lord Chamberlain. Rather than react with alarm or resistance, William responded with a simple nod and no further questions. Insiders interpreted his silence as quiet approval, a measured decision that reflected years of personal discomfort with Camilla's role in the royal structure. "He didn't object," said one courtier. "He let it happen." The tension between William and Camilla has existed for over 2 decades, beginning with the fractured years following Diana's death in 1997. Though he maintained polite decorum publicly, William privately resented Camilla's growing influence, especially over his father. He viewed her inner circle advisors as meddling and untrustworthy, particularly after a series of press leaks in 2012 that he believed were orchestrated to undermine Catherine. This recent betrayal involving the portrayal of Kate in the biography reignited all of those old wounds. William reportedly told aides he would not be drawn into conflict, but would support his father's judgment. The decision to remain neutral publicly and disengage privately has strengthened his position as an heir. Rather than appear vindictive, he has positioned himself as mature, restrained, and above factionalism. Yet those close to him know the truth. He is quietly reclaiming the institution once damaged by Camilla's presence. His loyalty, one advisor confirmed, is and has always been with Diana. Catherine's presence has been steady but measured. She has avoided public comment, choosing instead to continue engagements alongside their children. However, her absence from a joint appearance with Camilla at a recent Royal Arts Trust gala, cancelled without explanation, was widely interpreted as a deliberate statement. Together, William and Catherine represent the monarchy's stabilizing force. And now, without needing to speak a word, they have emerged on the right side of a crumbling divide. But if William was the silent tide, Anne was the storm beneath. Where he watched, she acted. And for the king, her voice, sharp, loyal, and unapologetic, became the line he could not ignore. Princess Anne's unwavering loyalty to the crown, not Camilla. When news of Camilla's unauthorized dealings broke internally, Princess Anne was one of the first to demand action. She reportedly entered Charles's private study at Balmoral and said bluntly, "You must choose between the woman you married and the family you lead." Anne has always been Charles's most trusted sibling, firm, loyal, and unafraid to speak truth to power. This time her message was unmistakable. The monarchy could not afford another scandal rooted in misplaced loyalty. In a private meeting with senior royal advisors at St. James's Palace, Anne expressed fury over Camilla's conduct. "She was never one of us." "Not truly," she said, according to a detailed memo leaked 2 days later. Her stance shocked no one. Anne has long viewed Camilla as an outsider, tolerated only for Charles's sake. With Camilla's misconduct now public, Anne has finally voiced what many in the royal household believed, but dared not say. To shield the monarchy from public backlash, Anne has increased her own visibility, taking on an additional 6 engagements over 2 weeks, including military ceremonies and diplomatic receptions. Her presence is now symbolic of continuity, discipline, and unimpeachable service. The British public, particularly older generations, have rallied behind her. Approval polls released by Ipsos on September 10th show Anne with a 91% favorability rating, the highest among all working royals. Her quiet alliance with William is strengthening. The two are said to be coordinating internal support strategies, agreeing that a prolonged divorce battle would only deepen the damage. Anne has reportedly urged Charles to finalize the separation before winter, before public sympathy wanes. In doing so, she has not just defended the crown. She has defined it. In the absence of trust, Anne's voice has become the royal family's conscience and its most formidable guardian. Legal proceedings are underway. Just 72 hours after King Charles's private announcement, the Royal Legal Council convened to begin drafting separation terms. The lead solicitor, Sir Gavin Morland, has been tasked with outlining the complex dismantling of a monarch's marriage. The terms are to include decisions on titles, housing, access to royal funds, and public responsibilities. It is the first time since the Royal Marriages Act of 1772 that legal advisors have interpreted royal divorce proceedings for a reigning sovereign. The current draft would allow Camilla to retain the title of Queen Consort Emerita, a ceremonial designation devoid of political weight or succession rights. However, she will be stripped of access to Duchy of Cornwall funds and removed from Crown estate privileges. Her housing arrangement will remain at Ray Mill House, not an official royal residence. Notably, all travel funding and staff support from the sovereign grant will cease within 90 days of the finalized separation. Perhaps the most consequential clause under review is the restriction on post-divorce memoirs and public interviews. Palace legal teams are crafting a non-disclosure provision that would prevent Camilla from publishing or contributing to any books, articles, or films that reference the royal family without explicit pre-approval. Financial penalties for breach could reach $5 million, a clause reportedly insisted upon by Prince William. "No more shaping history to Souther," said one source close to William's communications team. Charles, according to aides, is compliant but fragile. He has requested that proceedings conclude before the royal tour season in March, allowing the monarchy to reset its public face without the distraction of personal scandal. While he has been involved in legal briefings, his focus remains on emotional recovery. "This isn't just a legal undoing," one insider noted. "It's the final chapter of a story that began in the shadows over 50 years ago." But while lawyers prepared documents in silence, the outside world roared with reaction. In the court of public opinion, the verdict was already in, and Diana's memory returned like thunder through the halls of Windsor. Public reaction? The announcement of Charles and Camilla's impending separation caused an immediate cultural shockwave. Within hours, the hashtag Diana was right trended across 48 countries, dominating headlines from London to Sydney to Toronto. Videos of Diana's famous 1995 Panorama interview, where she chillingly stated, "There were 3 of us in this marriage," were reposted over 30 million times. It was as if the world had pressed rewind, and Diana's truth was finally echoing without resistance. Opinion polls conducted by YouGov just 24 hours after the leak revealed that 81% of Britons supported the king's decision to separate. More tellingly, 67% believed that Camilla should be fully removed from all royal titles. News outlets, usually cautious in their treatment of royal matters, published editorials proclaiming this moment as Diana's posthumous vindication. Even the BBC, once criticized for exploiting Diana, aired a tribute documentary within 3 days of the announcement. Calls began to emerge for the restoration of Diana's former honors, including a potential renaming of the Princess of Wales Foundation to include her full title posthumously. Several MPs from both major parties floated the idea of declaring August 31st, the date of Diana's death in 1997, a national day of remembrance. A commemorative statue proposal long stalled by internal disputes was suddenly fast-tracked with new public funding. For William and Harry, though still estranged, this moment represented a unique convergence. While Harry remained publicly silent, sources say he privately sent a message of support to William. "She warned us, you're doing the right thing." The global sympathy flooding toward Diana's legacy reshaped the narrative not just of this divorce, but of the entire royal story. The woman once branded a problem had become the pillar, and Camilla, once rehabilitated, was collapsing under the weight of her own past. Inside the palace, the message was clear. The public had chosen its side. Now the firm had to act quickly to adapt or risk being consumed by the past it had long tried to suppress. The royal household restructures. With the monarchy rocked by internal betrayal and public upheaval, the Lord Chamberlain's office enacted an emergency structural review. Within a week, over 22 staff members were reassigned, most notably from Camilla's communications and private secretary teams. Her personal office within Buckingham Palace was shuttered, its nameplate quietly removed. In its place, a new division was established under Williams's chief of staff, signaling a transfer of influence from consort to heir. 2 of William's closest advisors, Simon Case and Rebecca Priestley, were promoted to positions within King Charles's planning unit, effectively merging father and son's inner circles. This marked a significant shift. Charles was ceding operational control to William, retaining ceremonial oversight. The arrangement was unofficial but evident. As one insider put it, the monarch is still Charles, but the monarchy now runs through William. Several upcoming high-profile events were restructured to highlight royal stability. Princess Anne was confirmed to lead the Commonwealth Envoys' dinner, while Princess Catherine was tapped to host the International Children's Summit, a role originally earmarked for Camilla. Prince Edward and Sophie were also brought into more central ceremonial roles, forming a visible core of trusted bloodline royals. Camilla's absence, once unthinkable, was now protocol. Perhaps most symbolic of all, the portraits inside the royal family gallery were reordered. Camilla's image, once placed beside Charles, was moved to a less prominent position. In its place, a full-length portrait of Diana, unveiled quietly in 2022, was relocated beside images of William, Kate, and their children. It was more than optics. It was a signal. The monarchy was returning to its roots, one built not on preservation of titles, but on the trust of the people. But structure is not the same as stability. Even as the palace braced itself for a new era, one final question remained, one that could reshape the monarchy forever. Would Charles remain on the throne? Can the crown survive another scandal? This divorce marks the second time in King Charles III's life that a marriage of his has collapsed under global scrutiny. But this time he wears the crown. In the face of unprecedented embarrassment, whispers of abdication have begun swirling inside Parliament and press rooms alike. Though no official indication has been given, several aides believe Charles is privately considering stepping aside by 2026, citing both emotional strain and declining public confidence. The constitutional implications are immense. If Charles were to abdicate, it would trigger a rapid transition to Prince William as king and Catherine as queen consort, a move widely supported by the public. In fact, a recent Ipsos poll shows 73% of respondents would support a controlled succession within the next 2 years. Quiet meetings have already taken place between the Archbishop of Canterbury, cabinet officials, and Kensington Palace to prepare for the possibility. Whether or not Charles chooses to remain, the monarchy itself has undergone irreversible transformation. Camilla's downfall has redrawn the boundaries of legitimacy. The old narrative of forgiveness, second chances, and rewritten history has collapsed. What remains is a monarchy rebuilt on 3 pillars: bloodline, duty, and public will. Diana's legacy is no longer a shadow. It is a standard, and William is poised to rise, not as a prince in waiting, but as a sovereign in spirit. For Camilla, there is no path back. Her role is finished. Hermitage is dismantled. For Charles, the choice is simple. Preserve the throne through succession, or try to salvage dignity while standing alone. The days of palace compromises are over. A new chapter has begun. And with it, the House of Windsor has been reborn. Under fire, through scandal, but finally perhaps on the right side of history. As Camilla fades into royal obscurity and Charles stands at the edge of abdication, the monarchy faces a crossroads more dramatic than any in recent memory. Diana's truth, long buried under protocol and revision, has roared back into the palace with thunderous force. William and Catherine now carry the public's trust, while Princess Anne anchors the crown in tradition. The betrayal that cracked the royal marriage has also cracked open a new era, one that may finally favor transparency over protection. In the silence that follows, one truth remains. The old royal order has fallen and there's no turning.